Hello, alchemists. What hidden wound within you is influencing your life, and what can you do about it? If you've already chosen your doorway, check the timestamps below. If not, here's a closer look. Doorway number 1, precision. Doorway number 2, the pearl veil. Doorway number 3, stitching the stories. Choose your doorway, alchemists, and let's begin the great work. Hello, alchemists, and welcome to your initiation through doorway number 1. You chose precision. And the question is, what hidden wound is influencing your life? So basically, what is going on in your shadow? And we're going to pull a shadow card right now and find out. So precision feels like the hidden wound might have to do with control, right? You may be a very detail-oriented person to the point where it can actually disrupt your life, right? And so that is where precision, something that can be a really good thing, becomes distorted. And even in this card, the woman is kind of looking down, almost like the precision that she has is also causing her a level of tiredness or distress. And this is reminding me of something like absinthe or something. It looks like absinthe. So the idea of being kind of lost in the details to the point that you get overwhelmed and anxious about them and lose sight of the bigger picture. That in your shadow card, yes, to me this is the golden ratio, this nautilus here, or snail shell, and someone broke out of the prison, right? And they broke their chains. So that prison, the hidden wound, is definitely a wound of being trapped in your mind, right? Trapped in your mind. You might go over the things over and over again. Sacred balance, harmony, duality, flow. Your peace is the bridge between opposites. Ooh. So it's not really saying that overthinking is necessarily, that it's not saying thinking is bad. Obviously, thinking about things and analyzing things and finding, it's about finding the balance that works for you. And, that comes down to the idea of, like, you can't be too overly engaged in the details, and you can't ignore the big picture either. But if you overengage in either one, you're not maintaining a sacred balance, right? And I know for a lot of people, you might spend a whole lot of time overthinking something, and then the moment comes and you just act impulsively. Or you might overthink things for a long time and then just be completely so overwhelmed that you get analysis paralysis, as they say. Rewind and reset. Yeah, how can you reset your mind when it comes to this kind of thing, right? It feels like almost impossible because these things are deeply trained into our minds, right? And I feel like I need those too. And so this wound is asking you to reflect on it. Oh my God, that sounds terrible. You need to reflect on your overthinking. Okay, so, but you need to reflect on it in a way that helps you let go of the pattern. So basically it's about reflecting on the foundational issue rather than like all the little fine random details. So instead of saying, oh, I do this certain, instead of overthinking generic situations in your life, take a moment to think why you're overthinking. They say metacognition, or thinking about thinking, is the highest form of intelligence. Now, obviously, you need the sacred balance. You can take it too far, but you deceive yourself a lot, right? Because you feel like there's a lot of deception from the outside, and so that turns into an inner sort of deception because you just you start seeing shadows and ghosts even where there aren't any, and overthinking situations. And the issue with this kind of thing is that, like, you probably did and do encounter this toxic stuff from outside of you too. But all you can control is what your inner narrative says. Look at that. We're getting a reinforcement of the balance here. Pour back and forth from big picture to little picture, and make sure you're taking that time to reset yourself. Because if you do not find, and it might be that you don't know the way that your reset works. Like, for example, for me, I have to spend hours alone in the quiet. Nobody talking to me, no other presence, just myself, in order to recenter and rebalance myself. And this pile could speak to me because I am overthinker. Yes, but to transcend this, it has to do with being able to turn your mind off sometimes to rewind and reset. But the most important thing is the long-term foundational fix of getting that balance back. And, these kind of transitions are never easy. That's why you get the death card with them often, right? Because the death card says this pattern is going to be too painful to continue. So it's going to die, whether you let it die and you're part of that pattern releasing, or whether you kick and scream as it happens, right? Yeah, so use your clarity. Aces are about potential. So that means the energy there is there for you to use this death energy to cut through this self-deception, and to open your vision to the foundation of this wound and get back to a balanced state. And it's no accident that this Four of Swords is right under rewind and reset, because the Four of Swords is very much about resting, recouping, realizing that in this context, overthinking, you need a break from it sometimes. If you don't get a break from overthinking, it will drive you crazy, right? It'll drive you crazy. You've got to escape from that loop. And that is how you will embody. Oh, look at this. 2 queens. Yeah. Embody this great energy of discernment balanced with emotion. Because a lot of times this overthinking energy comes from an overabundance of, compulsive emotions, right? So even though thinking is the realm of swords, the realm of air, it's highly influenced by fire wands, right? By your passions. I am grateful for all the blessings in my life. That's one thing. Like, if you're overanalyzing a lot of things, you don't have time for gratitude. And gratitude is the kind of energy that helps you with your foundation. I am capable of creating a life filled with joy and happiness. You're not just capable with this Ace of Swords, Queen of Swords here. It is your mind's natural state. And so in time, remember, so much of the wounds we have cause patterns over years, months, decades even, that ingrain themselves into you. And so there used to be the saying that was like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, they found out that cognitively that is not right. You can rewrite your mind. You can rewrite your nervous system. And so these wounds that happen, you need to, instead of overthinking your day-to-day life, you need to stop and use that beautiful, beautiful metacognition that you have to reflect on the patterns and the foundational cracks in your psyche so that you can actually transcend this. you need to rest your mind sometimes. And even if that just means doing an activity like video games or taking a walk or something that just like blanks your mind out. I swear I spend time staring at a wall sometimes because I just can't. I'm just like, I can't think anymore. So anyway, okay, Alchemist, you are doing amazing. Continue the great work. And please comment below how you are transmuting this energy and balancing your sacred foundation. I'll see you next time. Hello, Alchemists, and welcome to your initiation through doorway number 2. You chose the Pearl Veil. And our question today is, what hidden wound is influencing you? So basically, what is your shadow trying to tell you? What is your shadow from your deepest core wound wanting you to know right now? With the Pearl Veil, I get this feeling of you being kind of an optimistic person, you're already an alchemist, right? You've had a lot of painful things in your life, and you've managed to transmute. I'm really struggling to fill out okay, I guess it's this one, the shadow cards. This one has a lot of kind of chaotic energy. So, but what I get here is that you have a wound of, how do I say this? Of despair, of melancholy. It might not even go as far as despair. It might just be melancholy. That you have compensated for by being overly optimistic. So there's a good thing is like everything, there's a balance, right? You have positivity, which is an amazing thing. It's a good thing. But what happens when that positivity becomes toxic? You become a shadow of who you were because you're living in this illusion that everything is perfect and that everything's okay. And you just say, oh, if I keep telling myself that, spiritual bypassing can also be a side effect of this. And remember, there's nothing wrong with you to end up having distortions, right? We all end up with some level of distortion in our lives. I feel the urge of 2 of these today. And there's nothing wrong with being positive, and I don't want to make anyone feel bad about that. Spiritual bypassing is something that's actually quite dangerous, though, which is basically where you're like, I'm not going to take care of my real life because I believe, the spirits are going to take care of everything. You can have that belief, but you still have to do the practical stuff. There's this old story, and it's like, oh, a man was stranded out in the ocean, and he said, God, please help me. And then a boat comes by and he says, no, God's going to save me. And this happens 3 times. And then he dies and he goes to heaven. He said, God, why didn't you save me? And God said, I sent you 3 boats. And so that would be spiritual bypassing, right? And it's really easy to fall into this when you get so overwhelmed, right? Or maybe you had a lot of really traumatic experiences. And so spiritual bypassing helps you feel that way. Forgotten light, hope, resilience, rediscovery. No darkness can erase what was born of light. Oh my gosh, this is so perfect because you are already beautifully bright and light, and leaning too far into the toxic positivity. I learned the hard way that compassion can even be toxic. Like everything needs to be balanced. When we talk about the tree of life, we're always talking about the idea or the concept, like beauty, understanding, mercy, but each one has a distortion. So it just means that your emotional patterns needed this for survival at some point, but now it's not really serving you. So empty space, openness, quiet possibility. Silence is not absence, it is potential. Yeah, so you're being invited to really sit with this energy of, how can I balance my viewpoint? So there's this funny meme I saw, and they're like, first it was like, oh, when I was young, I was an idealist. And an idealist is somebody who kind of sees the best in everything, who sees all the great potentials in the world and in life. And then when I got older, I became a realist, and then it was perceived as like a realist being someone who just sees the dark, realistic things. And then the third part goes, and then I became a surrealist and everything got weird. And there's just like, basically looks like a Salvador Dali painting with dripping clocks and trains running up into the sky and stuff. And so once you're able to balance this, because where you're at right now is you're in that idealistic phase, but it is triggered because you're actually a realist and you see reality for how it is, if that makes any sense. I know that sounds kind of weird and contradictory, but you see how you have seen and experienced how terrible reality can be, and therefore have cocooned yourself up into the space of overcompensating with your spirituality, maybe overcompensating with positivity. And, you know, we are all told that thing like, fake it till you make it. But if you don't fix the foundational pain or the wound, or you don't at least build a container around it, you know, because a lot of people say, like with grief and different things, you can't really heal from it, but you can build a container around it. And let's see, make music. Yeah, so these are your advice cards. You need to make space to open your heart to this possibility. Oh, I'm getting like this heaviness, like almost like panic in your chest. Without this, what do you have? Who are you? You are this. You are the forgotten light that you're going to remember and rediscover. And you do that through your creativity. You do that through emptying out of any of these pains or preconceived notions or anything like that. What caused this to happen in the first place? You had to walk through the world as an illusion, as a mask, and it felt so out of balance with your true identity that you felt secretly, or like inside you felt like you were falling apart, but you were still projecting this strength. And now it's time to move inward and make your creative life, even if it's for 1 minute a day, do that. If you can only empty out your space for 1 minute a day, because so much of what we suffer from is stuff that it's not that we need to add more information. It's that we need to remove a bunch of patterns and information. It's a fine balance, right? Oh, this is going to really help you achieve the emotional balance you feel like you've been really, really wishy-washy about. And you've just been like waiting, kind of almost like in a passive role, like things are going to get better. I just know the universe has my back. The universe does have your back. But this is saying you have to have your back too. You are the universe anyway, right? So you have your own back. How can you not be passive and just be kind of hoping and putting out good thoughts and stuff? And, you know, there's a lot of people who like push manifesting in very specific ways, but, and a lot of those things work, but true manifestation starts with rewiring your thought patterns, right? Not being thrown around by fate, not having your emotions easily manipulatable, right? So many of us, people can manipulate our emotions so easily. And if you're in this place that I'm talking about here, if this is resonating for you, this sort of childlike energy is keeping you in a space where you are at the whim of other people's emotions because you're so worried about keeping it positive. You're so worried about making sure they're okay. What about you? Are you okay? Look at that. No, the stuff is roiling underneath. Stuff is moving underneath. You can't hold this illusion together anymore that everything's okay. Yep, look at that. I keep getting the word melancholy. You feel trapped in this state of, I understand other people. I'm there for other people. Who understands me? Who is there for me? And I'm going through this right now, actually. So I really resonate with this as well. But there's a time when you have to say, you know what? Obviously, go get the help you need professionally if you need to. But also, like, you need to say, what can I do to just focus on myself and heal this? Get clarity. And that will open up. That will open up the opportunity for you to cut through this, the patterns that this wound has inflicted upon you, right? And remember, always these wounds, they arise because they needed to arise, right? They served a purpose. And you can even release them ceremonially by saying, you have served your purpose. Thank you so much. And a lot of times it's just about repeating that every time, like, you know, every time you notice one of these patterns. Oh my goodness. I choose to focus on the positive in every situation. This is less of a mantra this time and more of a reflection of, yes, it's good to focus on the positive, but make sure that you are being honest with yourself as well. And that will create true confidence. And I'm capable of creating a life filled with joy and happiness. Yes, of real joy and happiness, of true joy and happiness. And that's this Ace of Swords energy, cutting through illusion. But remember, you have to take these steps to get out of this Eight of Swords. Sort of a combination of melancholy and being trapped, but also being blinded. Always thinking that there's something better around the corner if you just pray hard enough, or you just try hard enough, or you just manifest hard enough. And you know, you might even have some really negative feelings because of manifestation shaming, which we do not do here on this channel, which is basically the idea that, oh, you don't have something in your life, or you haven't healed something because you didn't manifest hard enough. No, 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 no. That's not how this works. And if you're curious about how this does work, feel free to watch my Embodying the Tree of Life videos. They really break down the inner psycho-spiritual world within your mind and how to navigate it and work with it. So I will leave a link for that down below. Please let me know how this has affected your life. I know that I have used this many times in my life to get by, to get through things, but then there's a point where you're ready to grow from this. And like I said, become more of a surrealist rather than just an idealist or just a realist. So, all right, alchemists, you're doing such a great job. Continue the great work, and I will see you next time. Hello, alchemists, and welcome to your initiation through doorway number 3. You chose stitching the stories. And the question today is, what hidden wound within you is influencing your life, your mind? So really, it's kind of digging into shadow, but in a deeper level, because we're looking here at what kind of like your core wound and how it's affecting your life. Look at me. Okay. So stitching the stories, it feels like you've probably been repeating some stories for so long about your life, about who you are, whether that's in your mind or to other people, that, 3. You've been repeating it so long that you don't even remember what the reality behind it is. And it might have even evolved some. And I'm not saying you're lying to yourself or other people. It's not like that at all. This is how stories work. They start one way, and then, you know, remember that game Telephone growing up where, like, you whisper one thing in someone's ear and then they whisper it, and then over time it turns into a completely different thing. But that's how stories work in our minds. Our lives are the stories we repeatedly tell ourselves. So if you're telling yourself a story over and over again, you're going to become that story. So let me give an example. I'm a trauma survivor. For years, it was easy to tell the story of victimhood. And that's completely valid for someone who's been through a lot of trauma, right? But at some point, I needed to transition my inner story into I'm a survivor. And not just a survivor, I am thriving. I still struggle with this. But the point is that the stories you tell yourself shape your life. And so your inner wound is saying, what story do you keep telling yourself? And we'll find out in a second with this shadow card. But not just that, when you have written your inner story and you keep repeating it to yourself, it manifests in your daily life because you're telling other people, and then they're reinforcing whatever story you're telling yourself. And this channel, I try to be so honest, but so gentle, but this is really deep stuff. And a lot of people will probably feel attacked, but it's nothing like that. This channel is just for you to reflect and do your own inner work. Oh my goodness. This was the shadow card in pile 2. So please go check out that doorway if that resonates. It is kind of mirroring this, because in doorway 2, we talked about almost like toxic positivity. So that is a story you can tell yourself over and over again to do spiritual bypassing, right? So here in your shadow is that if you tell the story enough, the illusion becomes your reality. And remember, it's not that the story didn't happen. It did happen. But how are you repeating it to yourself? What context are you giving it to yourself? Are you, Jung talked a lot about how people will make certain past events their identity. And you're meant to rise up past that. Lost signal, distance, numbness, reconnection. Your inner voice is never truly gone. Jung talks about complexes, which are basically like a series of patterns and things like that in our minds that get grooved in so deep, they almost take on a personality of their own, and they move you through your life almost without your consent. So sometimes if you feel like you're doing things impulsively and you're like, why did I do that? I don't understand why I said that. It can come from this space that you repeated a story to yourself so much that it took on its own life. And in that way, you lost the signal, right? You started buying into the illusion, and you can feel disconnected from yourself, from your true story, because you're so attached to a very specific version that has been repeated to you or that you repeated. Static between worlds. You are in Da'at. Da'at in the tree of life. Excuse me. La 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 la. Da'at in the tree of life is the liminal space. It is the space of when you lose something, but the new thing hasn't happened. When you've lost a version of your identity, but you have not come into the new version yet. It is one of the most painful places. Confusion, energy, reset. Look at this. Reconnection, reset. The stories you've been telling yourself, or that other people around you have been telling you and you've been buying into, you're not able to ignore this anymore. You are in that static place. You're in the in-between place, the liminal space between the stories you used to tell and the new stories you're going to tell. The ones that bring you more to life rather than push you down. It doesn't mean spiritual bypassing, which might be why they're asking you to look at number 2, because that's about spiritual bypassing. But because you don't want your new stories to be spiritual bypassing or toxic compassion or toxic positivity, because honestly, those are actually wounds, right? When you're so compassionate or so positive that clearly you're not in touch with reality anymore. And once again, no blame here. I've been through all this. I think everyone goes through this at some point, or a lot of people do. But this in-between space is the perfect space for you to question this wound and rebuild the foundation. Because remember, all of these wounds, deep wounds, all of them served a purpose at some point. Maybe you were young and you repeated a certain attitude or pattern because you were looking for compassion. You were going through true suffering. And you wanted somebody to understand you. So you kept telling the story because you just wanted someone to understand. But no one ever really understood. And the story took on a life of its own. And maybe in a direction you didn't want it to. The outside voice, influence, comparison, truth. You are not a reflection of the crowd. Yeah, and so, but when we get stuck in that space of needing external or an outside voice in order to validate our story, it can be empowering. That's why we go to therapy and things like that. But if that's your only validation, the idea is that that's still a stepping stone phase. The true phase is learning how to validate yourself without needing external validation, permanently. As always, easier said than done. There is no shame, no blame in this place because, this is a healing space. But true healing takes a true mirror, right? You've got to be able to truly look at the mirror, whether you want to or not, in order to start that journey. And I think that so far this is such a complex, that's probably why it asked for 3 cards, such a complex wound that this is just explaining the wound so far. Make your move. You are being called to start the transmutation process. I think this, for a lot of you, this is the identifying moment for you. Or maybe it's been kind of niggling around in the back of your head for a while that something's kind of off and that you're tired of feeling bad and you're tired of the same thing over and over again and the thought patterns and, oh, look at that. Yes. Now we're getting your advice. Look at this energy. Wow. So your advice is to rethink your stories in a way that is going to transmute into your security and power so that you can actually find true emotional peace. And this is going to be a slower process. Ace of Cups. Okay, this showed up in the exact same position in pile 2. So with these, I really encourage you to check that out. For some of you, the story you've been telling has been one of spiritual bypass or positivity to a level of not facing your problems. And but we've also been getting a lot of aces throughout all the readings today. And so this is all about, you're at the beginning of this journey and the realization really is knowing is half the battle, right? Because the battle to get to knowing, to understanding it, to truly be able to embody what this means, that is half the battle, right? To get that clarity. Look at that. 8 of Cups. There's so much emotional energy here. And so you're really emotionally attached to these stories that you tell yourself. But what's going to happen when you are able to release this old programming and really start moving forward, is that if you take this chance, if you really embrace this opportunity of seeing clearly and starting to rewrite your stories, you're going to catch yourself being like, nope, I'm going to rewrite that. Because you become the story you tell, right? The universe is awesome and so am I. That's a great story to tell yourself, right? It doesn't mean, oh my goodness, this is so weird because this card showed up in all 3 piles. So I do feel like all 3 piles are kind of overlapping wounds, or it could be that they're all from the same wound. So telling yourself certain stories is usually, it can be from an abandonment wound. It can be from a wound of needing control. So you can control the story even if you feel like you're out of control everywhere else, right? So make your move. Ace of Cups, make your move. This is like working with your mind, your subconscious is like a chess game, right? And with these skeletons here, it is life or death. Dogen Zenji said, life and death are of extreme importance. Life quickly passes by and opportunity is lost. Everyone should strive to awaken. Awaken, take heed, do not squander your life. And it doesn't mean feel guilty about resting. It doesn't mean make yourself feel bad because you didn't figure. You only know what you know when you know it, right? So, but now the universe has revealed this to you today. It's time to make your move. And you will, alchemists. Please tell me below how this is moving in your life, how you're transmuting your stories into something that empowers you rather than disempowers you. And thank you for being here, and continue the great work, alchemists, and I'll see you next time.